Welcome to another episode of the Support for Employment podcast. All right, a very special episode today. Welcome back to the show. We have cameras back on. We missed out on cameras last week. Felix, you were there for that. We're in a very cramped room. We could not fit our key lights and our tripods in there. But back to the art room today, and with a very special guest who I'll introduce shortly. So you guys will see familiar faces, Felix and Zara. You haven't been on camera yet, have you? You were there for the video test.
Yeah.
That's right.
Since
but
then.
You haven't gone live. No. All right, so put a face to the voice.
We're both making our debuts today. So.
and that voice you heard just then is none other than our very own Carmela's brother-in-law, but more importantly, Inspector Paul Gauci. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Scott.
Of course.
Lovely to be here.
Paul's decorated career in the Victorian Police Force includes 4 decades in diverse roles, most notably his leadership, detective sergeant, and inspector positions. Paul's ability to achieve the role of inspector speaks for itself, and he carries many commendations from his directors and supervisors along the way, some of which include his exceptional communication and organisational skills, his ability to produce results to the highest level, his inspirational leadership, people-focused influence, and lead by example professionalism, his ability to create a vision, share that insight with relevant stakeholders, and effectively perform the actions required to actualise it, and an abundance of praise and acclaim from his colleagues and mentors. Paul has been an integral part of large-scale operations, including the Public Order Response Team, Transit Safety Division, Hotel Quarantine Program back in the Australian Open in 2021, disaster response teams during Black Saturday, 2020 bushfires and COVID-19, various task forces, and a plethora of other noteworthy campaigns. Lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't mention his dedication to his community through various volunteering roles, his leadership mentoring program with the Victorian Police, his work with various primary and secondary schools, and his coaching positions with various local sports teams. With awards, honours, and experience to boot, I've only scratched the surface of Paul's impact during his inspiring career. So with the help of Felix and Zara today, I hope we can learn much more about Inspector Paul Gauci.
Thanks, Scott.
Of course.
Lovely introduction.
Hopefully all correct.
Yep.
Beautiful. So, panel interview style. So Felix and Zara have prepared some questions of their own. I also have some questions to follow up. So maybe we start with Felix. Do you have one queued?
Yes. Can you describe a high-pressure decision you had to make and how you handled it?
There has been, it's a very good question, but there's been many along the way. These have been through interactions with very dangerous people. They have been planning for very big operations like we did when we went through a lot of the struggles through the COVID environment and large protests. So there was a lot of decision-making around that. But I guess, the decision-making process for me is, it's risk-assessed based. What is best for, the protection of the community, but, importantly, it's the protection and safety of the staff that I'm responsible for in the foremost. With policing, it's very dynamic, so it continues to evolve. So you might make a decision in a hybrid, like in a protest where you've got a lot of people and you're dealing with a lot of conditions, but frequently in those environments, things change and they change really dramatically. So you're continuing to review, to assess. Also, I think it's really important as leaders is that I haven't got all the answers, all right? So I work with a lot of very, very smart people, and good leadership is about listening to those people, taking on advice that's provided and then going through a, decision-making framework and making a decision.
Fantastic. Any follow-up questions from you guys on that area?
But can I just say that,
Absolutely.
I've done this for this is my 39th year, but I don't think I've ever been more proud of a work unit than I was at, Fort Port during that time, because, they're consummate professionals, highly trained, but the reality is that, they were responsible for doing this, over again and again and again. And I don't think I've ever been in an environment before where I think most people, if you ask why they joined Victoria Police, it would be to help people. They don't like people that break into houses or, are involved in domestic violence or use drugs. But the protest environment was very different. So I don't think I've ever led people before where, we're unsure about, what we were doing, what the direction that the state was going and the Premier was going. So I think that's the only time that I've ever been in an environment where the people I led, I wasn't 100% sure that everyone was on the same page. But because of great leadership, from, all the leaders at Port, and, we really, leadership is not a rank, it's about an individual and it's about decision making and it's about, supporting others. So that leadership really goes from, the most junior member to the most senior member. But the leadership across, that area during that time was, really important in keeping everyone focused and keeping everyone safe during a particularly challenging time.
There you go. You said two magic words during that, which was helping people. So I think I might, Zara, if you don't mind, I might ask, what is the best example of you helping people during your time in the police force?
It's a really difficult question because I think, if I can give a bit of a backstory, like I'd love to come here and say that when I was born, I wanted to do a job and a profession that helped people, but that's not true. I want to be really honest and vulnerable through this interview. And as an 18-year-old, my school marks were ordinary, and I was looking to do something that was exciting, and I had a genuine interest in law, and so I thought that the police force might be something that provides some diversity, provides some excitement. It also had a really cool uniform. I thought the uniform would be good and would help me meet girls, and for a immature and 18-year-old boy, and that's what I was. I was a very sheltered, protected from a European family, youngest child, very spoiled. That was my level of thinking. I thought it'll be exciting. The uniform looks pretty cool, but on my first night shift, I'd been through the academy. I was very young. I learned a bit in the academy and I started out at Broadmeadows. But on the 12th of October 1988, on my very first night shift, 2 police officers were gunned down in Wall Street, South Yarra. So for me, that changed my whole perspective about Victoria Police. It wasn't just fun and games. It wasn't just excitement. And it really highlighted, the risks associated with the vocation that I'd chosen. That was an incredibly difficult time for Victoria Police. Those members were gunned down and executed as a retaliatory result of police shooting some offenders prior to that on the day before. So it really highlighted that there was some significant challenges with policing. I was still living at home at the time. I knocked on the front door at 7 o'clock in the morning to my mum, who was in tears. I was still living at home with my mum. She said, "You're not going back to work." She goes, "That's it, you're doing another career." So I really needed to make some really strong decisions as a very immature 19-year-old boy at that time about what I wanted to do, the value of what I do, and the importance for doing it. When you talk about helping the community, when somebody's partner, mother, father, son or daughter is murdered, taken from them, I think it's like a real privilege to be able to investigate those murders, and with a lot of hard work, a lot of teamwork, some great leadership. Generally, we would bring the offenders to justice. Now, whilst that it doesn't make up for what's happened, it does provide some closure for families. And some of these people that we dealt with were very violent, very dangerous to the community, and it was really, really important that those people were taken into custody as soon as possible to ensure that the community was protected.
Wonderful. I'll let Zara.
I have a question. It's what would you consider your career path worth it?
Yes. Would you?
Would you? Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
That's okay. Yeah, absolutely. Zara, it's been an incredible journey. Sometimes were exciting with car chases, apprehending murderers, being involved in large operations, seizing lots of drugs and charging lots of people. The homicide squad that I spoke about, which was an incredible 5 years, doing work with the public order response team was just incredible, absolutely incredible. The work I do now at the Policy and Legislation Division, which is really about advocating with government for appropriate legislation to deal with the challenges that we currently have, has been like an amazing opportunity, an amazing area to work with a bunch of really, really clever and hardworking, dedicated people. So it absolutely has been worth it. But if I'm honest, there's different periods where it's taken its toll. And I know, one of the after doing 5 years at the homicide squad, I went out to King Lake following the Black Saturday fires, and I had seen a lot of death. At the homicide squad, we would go to 3 scenes where people had died on a weekly basis. So I was very familiar with seeing the horrors of those sort of environments. But King Lake was different. King Lake, when I went up there, was like a war zone. I'd never seen anything like it before. And then probably 9-10 months later, I'd be in bed watching TV with my beautiful wife Louisa, and we'd be watching a movie, and I'd start to get really emotional and cry. And she rightfully said, "What's going on? I've never seen you cry before." And I was getting some of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress. So that was a really challenging time for me and, for my family, and required counselling and psychology support. And I learned a lot about myself. And it's a really, really challenging time when those things happen. But the beauty of that is that I think you develop a greater sense of empathy for those that have been through it. I think it actually enhances, your leadership capability because, you can read stuff and you can do stuff, but walking in the shoes of challenges best prepares you to support people into the future and that. And a lot of my work post that time has been about supporting others.
So during that time, obviously a very vulnerable time for you going through that. What are some of the strategies that you have now, some of the coping mechanisms that you have now that allow you to sort of bolster yourself if you are ever exposed to something like that ever again?
Yeah, so I think, that process has evolved. But I have I'm incredibly disciplined, and that is probably just the nature of, some of it has got to do with just my own DNA, and some of it is probably in relation to the time that I went through the academy. It was very, it was getting up early and making your beds immaculately and lots of marching, and there was a very military sense to it at that particular time. But my day, to take you through a day, would start up at around 4:45 a.m. in the morning. I get up, I go into a cold shower for 3 minutes. I'll then do about 15 minutes of deep breathing. It's like Wim Hof breathing. Then I will meditate for 20 minutes. And then I will pray or read the Bible. My faith is really important to me. Then I will go to the gym and commence my day. So I train regularly. I train daily. That's obviously obvious, Felix.
Yeah,
you can tell. Thanks, Felix.
Felix biting his tongue.
So exercise is really important. Nutrition is really important. Social connection is really important as well. One of the key things I've done over the last 38 years is learn and study and grow and evolve. And the beauty of that is that it's enabled me to understand how I can protect myself how I can embed these practices in some of the work units that I've worked at to protect others, and continue to grow. And I think when you're growing, it's a really wonderful place to be in. I think it's, my motto is that, every day's a school day. Like, it's really important to continue to learn, and you can learn off everybody.
Beautiful. Felix, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, this will be like a fun kind of question.
Go for it.
Do police actually love donuts and coffee?
Well, yes. I think that's a fair question, Felix. I think the honest answer would be yes, we do love donuts.
Zara, would you mind firing off another
Yeah,
question,
I've
please?
got another fun question.
Beautiful.
Do you get discounts on fines?
Regrettably, no. But we're trying to role model good values. So, we try and stick to the speed limit and try and do the right things.
That lead by example approach.
That's it.
Felix, do you have a question queued up? Let's fire away.
Were you involved at all during the Desi Freeman case?
Well, that's, again, another, tragic experience for all those involved with that. I had a very minor role at the State Police Operations Centre, working there where Victoria Police coordinated lots of resources to go to that area initially. So again, particularly challenging to get large volumes of people to the area, to be involved with, crime scenes, searching, investigations, supporting the community up there, reassurance patrols as well. Had an opportunity to work at the State Police Operations Centre for a number of weeks during that operation.
A tragedy like that sends shockwaves not only through the Victorian Police Force, not only through Victoria, but Australia. What was that like being in your position?
I think the work, Victoria Police and probably even the Victorian community are probably at a level of fatigue. We've been through bushfires and floods and COVID. And then, we come straight out of that into, challenges with, youth crime and knife crime. I think, if you did a pulse check of our community, it's still quite heightened, and currently there's global unrest and cost of living pressures and things of that nature. But in my role at the SPOC, we had to arrange. It was it was in the days immediately after the tragic shooting that we had to arrange for members to stop what they're doing and to head up to that area. And as a leader, I felt like, for the last, 4 or 5 years, I'd been constantly ringing people, and that would be on, just prior to Christmas or New Year's, and say, look, I know that you have all these plans, but I need to stop what you're doing if that's okay, and go to this part of the border and do this work that you weren't planning on doing yesterday. So that happened, quite constantly during the COVID environment. But through the SPOC experience for Paul Punker incident is that I spoke to 20 staff that we were deploying to the crime scene area and to support the local community and support the investigation. And we'd probably never done that before. We'd normally dispatch them and provide them emails and provide them some instruction. But one of the senior leaders at the SPOC said, I think in this instance, because of the nature of the incident, because of the level of fatigue that everyone had, I think we should call them. And there was a lot of resistance in relation to calling everyone we were deploying, because there was 80 people, I think, that was going up in the first wave. But it was a brilliant idea, and the communication with them was slow down, travel safe, be safe, and I think I was just really taken back by their responses, their enthusiasm, their willingness to continue to help, because Victoria Police, there's this thing about bond and connection and brotherhood, and I don't think I've ever seen it as palpable during that particular period of time, where people who were obviously fatigued and doing lots and lots of different things came together very, very quickly, said goodbye to their family and the things that they had to do, and went up to the Papunka site, which I think is just a credit to, some of the people that we have in our organisation.
Definitely admirable to literally walk into the face of danger and obviously seeing the after effects of what has just happened to then go, okay, let's go get this guy.
Yeah, and it was, obviously scary. The person that they were looking for, Desi Freeman, he'd shot at 3 members, killed 2, was very dangerous, was very erratic, and there is significant, and part of that conversation speaking to him was to be careful, because these people were working very long days, 10 or 12 hours, and generally, as circumstances happen, when you stumble across an offender, like we did at the homicide squad, very frequently, it's at the end of being awake for 24 or 48 hours. It's always at the most unopportune time. So the people that went up there, the people that investigated, they're incredibly brave, incredibly bright, and incredibly well led, and they maintained the course, all this time, and until we got a resolution last week or the week before.
Great question. Great answer.
Nice one, Felix.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Zara, do you have a question queued?
No.
Okay. I might dig through mine. Feel free to take a little drink break right now. Give me about 30 seconds. Quick little intermission for those watching, just to refresh and turn the aircon off for Zara, who's freezing over there. I was going to ask a question, but Felix has got some queued up, so let's go with Felix.
Have you ever tased someone?
No.
Yeah, so not
that's,
yet.
That's good.
Yeah.
Any other weapon discharges, I suppose, that you've had to do specifically?
I have arrested lots of people for every offence, all the way through to murder. I've had my firearm drawn a couple of times. It was subject to lots of discussion post the Papunka incident in relation to, it's a tragic set of circumstances on a search warrant. And the person I was talking to was a very senior member at the State Police Operations Centre. And we spoke about that we'd been involved in, maybe 1,000 incidences in our careers, which have gone a long time, involving the arrest of very, very dangerous, violent people. And I'm really confident, as I said here, is that 500 of those have gone ahead safely. Has been because of the people that I work with, training, planning, our equipment, the tactical support that we have. We've got some amazing people that do that. But the other 500 is probably, through grace and, through the faith that I have and through luck, because, it's a really challenging environment at times. And I really think that, half of those times it's just because there's a power far greater than me looking after me.
Mm. You have touched on family a bit, which is something that I unfortunately didn't pre-screen for questions in your introduction. Obviously something that means a lot to you, something that you hold in very high regard. As we all know, sometimes with work comes sacrifice, and no one knows more about that than those in our emergency services. In regards to family, can you talk about some of the sacrifices you've had to make over your career?
I think there's probably 2 things. One is actual time. There's been many times where historically, we would get called out and we would work for 1 day, 2 days. I think 3 days was the most. I've travelled interstate and overseas for work. So there is definitely times when you're not at home. Then there's also the period of PTSD when I wasn't at my best. So there's those sacrifices as well. But I think because it's something that is important to me, and is part of my true purpose, is about trying to make up for it where possible. I think if you ask my beautiful wife Louisa, I haven't got balance right. I'm all in at work. and she says that I don't know how to slow, I don't know how to rest, I don't know how to slow down. But I think, what I try and do is times of work, focus on that, support the people that I'm at work with. And then when we're with family, try and be present and connected with family. The relationship I have with my children is beautiful. The fact that I'm married, 31 years, there is,
Wow.
There is a lot of, we talk about, the spillover of challenges in emergency services and policing, and part of that goes into relationships. And, regrettably, there is a lot of, emergency services probably have a much higher divorce rate than, other professions. So I think it's probably a testament to my wife that she's patient, understanding, forgiving, tremendously loyal and faithful, that we're together 31 years later. It was an amazing career that's afforded me wonderful connection and wonderful growth, but has challenges along the way.
Absolutely. Do you also attribute your faith, your religion, to being able to handle with, cope, and do the day-to-day that is required, especially during those challenging times?
Yeah, I think, my faith, like my leadership journey is continuing to evolve and deepen. It provides me like a great sense of peace and a sense of protection, which is, really critical and really valuable as well.
Absolutely. Felix, I might handball
Yep.
it over to you if that's okay.
I had it just before.
Take your time. No stress.
What types of crime are becoming harder to manage?
That's a really good question, Felix. And I think, it's sort of publicised on the media almost on a daily event, and that's, our challenges with youth. And our youth crime is such a wicked, complex problem, and it's not a problem the Victoria Police can solve on their own. So when you've got issues with youth, it involves Victoria Police, and it involves education at schools and the support that the teachers need at school. It involves support to parents and carers of kids that are struggling. It involves, sport. Sport's really critical for children, and having them feeling connected to a group. And I know with some of the work that we did with Rotary in the Leaders and Mentoring Program with Cleveland United, a local Dandenong soccer club, that the coaches there said that if they are not connected to this group here, they will join another gang. So it's really important that you have a feeling of connection, a feeling of purpose, and then it sort of extends on to when they move away from sport, education, employment. So it is such a complex issue where so many people are required to be involved. And I know, as a parent, it's, you're confronted with things that are really challenging at times. I couldn't imagine trying to parent a child on their own, because, when you have the accumulation of, the stresses of your day and on your work. And there are some times where I have to say to my wife, I can't deal with, my son or my daughter now. Can you do this? So, my hat goes off to those people that have to do it on their own. I think that's incredible. We're in an environment where, there's a lot of work and a lot of energy, and a lot of money needs to be introduced to support children. And I think, my wife is a primary school teacher. And what I find interesting about that is I think if you go into any primary school and you speak to the teachers, they will clearly identify those youth at the school that are struggling and that need support. There are some support mechanisms in place, but I have a sense that, could probably do more as a community to provide more support to those youth, to those families, to make sure that, we keep them, connected. Connection is so really important to family, to people that care for them, to employment, to sport, to prevent them from, taking a pathway that is bad for them, bad for the community, and bad for their family. So, a really important question.
Absolutely. Is that Felix? There is one in the career questions of the questions that Felix and Zara have in front of them around mentorships. Obviously, you're a very prominent mentor to others within, obviously, not only your community, but within your work role as well. Who was your most prominent mentor during your career?
I was probably fortunate enough to have mentors, along the way. So I've had many. Doing the Leaders and Mentoring program with Rotary was a really interesting program that afforded mentorship outside of Victoria Police as well. And through that program, I was connected with Stella Smith, who's the CEO. At the time, she was the political and government engagement manager for Melbourne Victory, and had a very extensive engagement with her for the program that we did. She's now the CEO for Crime Stoppers. That also led to engagement with the CEO for the Centre of Multicultural Youth, Carmel Guerra. It was probably, a shift for me, but, back 10 years ago, about that engagement with really senior leaders of the community. Whereas I think before, you can be quite insular in Victoria Police. And we're very siloed, but that course exposed me to senior leaders outside the Victoria Police and provided really good connection and probably a greater understanding that the skills that we learnt with Victoria Police are transferable outside of Victoria.
So I might get everyone to queue up one more question, Zara, if you don't mind.
Can I'll ask a question.
For sure.
So we talk about the challenges with youth, all right, which is something that is a concern for everyone. Now, both of you are quite youthful. So in your areas of your social things, like, can you tell me what you think some of the youth problems are about? What perspective do you have in relation to that?
Like in terms of the gang activity?
Yeah, well, just youth in general. Like, hopefully you're not a member of too many gangs, Felix.
I know some mates that were.
So maybe think about those mates, some of the things that they do outside of, obviously, when they're hanging out with you, or maybe even when they are hanging out with you, some of the things that they may say or do, or how they spend their time. How do you think they may attribute to their activities?
Well, they didn't really have a family.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was drug use and alcohol.
Yep.
And I think one of them is still doing that. The others have recovered because they play sport.
Yep.
And this guy, he is seeing people like counsellors and all that.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to help him.
Yeah, absolutely.
So going back to that, one of the key pillars is family, that connection with family, which is really important. And that's why, there should be support around families, because when some youth get taken into drugs or alcohol or gang environments, it becomes a really complex parenting issue, and a lot of parents are unequipped to deal with that. So there should be mechanisms to support them do that. So it's great that we understand the value of connection with family. You spoke about some of them came back to sport as well. Yeah, look, I've played sport, all my life at different clubs, and it's, you liken it to a family, that sport, and you can have coaches, colleagues, family and friends associated with the club that, again, it's that connection piece that are really important. And, I think it's important that if there are youth that are struggling, that, what we would always encourage is to speak to someone, speak to a friend, speak to a parent, speak to a relative, speak to, if you're at school, speak to a teacher, a social worker. There are a plethora of mechanisms out there to support and help you, and that's what we want to do.
What about you, Zara? Is there anyone in your life that you've been lucky not to be exposed to anyone in that sort of
No,
environment?
it's just, how do I explain it? I'm so sorry. My brain's just fried.
That's okay, me too.
I did sort of they are family, but we don't talk to them anymore.
I see.
Because drugs, alcohol, all that, we don't talk to them at all because of what my mum has received from them years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had no contact with them since, but I know what it's like at times because they were my cousin and my uncle, but I don't talk to them anymore. Yeah, I just don't like talking about it.
No, of course, and I won't question you anymore on it. But thanks for sharing, Zara. Appreciate it. And you too, Felix. I know it's a bit candid to sort of talk about your friends in that manner, but you really appreciate you guys sharing.
That's fine. I can snitch on like boy.
Well, now's the time. All right. Well, like I said, guys, queue up one more question each. I'll ask one to you, Paul, around some standout moments of your career. Obviously, some highlights, achievements, promotions, friendships made. Yeah, just feel free to rattle off some good times you've had.
Yeah, I think, like the time with our policy and legislation division people, I have a wonderful leader there, Louise Jarrett, who afforded me opportunities and had trust and faith in me as part of an amazing group of people who've really advocated for legislative reform to try and make our community safer, which has been really valuable. The times at Port, in those environments under enormous adversity through those protests were an incredible highlight. Some of the work done at the corruption task forces and at homicide has been really fulfilling, challenging, and had some really great outcomes. But ultimately it's about the relationships you make along the way. And there's some of those are mentors, some of them friends, that will I'll stay connected with, well past, when my time at Victorian Police ends.
Just a quick side question around your current role. Said it was legislative and
Policy and Legislation
policy
Division.
and legislation. So what are some positive things that you've done there that kind of help Victorians or help the police force?
I think part of the two pieces of work that we're focused on is, there's probably three. One is in relation to youth crime. We've done a lot of work in that youth crime space, a lot of work in relation to the public transport, because I worked at transit before, in relation to knife crime as well. And there's also been a lot of focus and a lot of proactive focus on tobacco and we started that maybe 3 years ago. So that's another, obviously a significant community issue that has, strong links to organised crime and, also adverse health impacts as well. So they're probably three particular things that we've been working proactively on that have had some really good results.
Amazing. Guys, when you're ready, cue your questions away and we'll start wrapping up.
Okay, I'll go.
Go for it. It's all good.
Do friends and family behave differently around you?
No.
Probably to their detriment, right?
No. I think, policing's obviously changed me. It's changed me and it's helped me grow. I've seen, the best of society and the worst of society as well. 20 years ago I said, look, I think it's tainted my soul. It's that's how I used to explain it. But the people that know me and just accept me for who I am, and I think it's more about me as opposed to my occupation. Yeah.
Felix, fire away. Finish us off.
Is it okay, so for my boss, if I report him for speeding?
Absolutely. I know your boss very well, Felix. And he has a lead foot, so absolutely.
Yeah.
And he's been using his phone a lot as well.
Oh my goodness me! We'll have a chat after the podcast. And we'll see
that'll be an off the record chat, I reckon.
I didn't bring my handcuffs, Felix, but we'll see what we can do.
That's right. We got zip ties in the workshop. We'll make it work.
Wonderful.
Well, that's the hour mark. So, Paul, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Scott.
You're on holiday, I believe, right? So we're not taking you away from anything super important.
That's right.
Good. Felix, Zara, thank you so much for curating questions, asking questions and being here. And to our listeners, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this episode as much as I have, because having someone in such a admirable role and such a role that is changing Victoria for the better, I believe. It's an absolute pleasure to be seated here and interviewing Inspector Paul Gauci today. So, guys, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for being here, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, Scott.
Cheers.
Felix and Zara.
Wow, hard hitting.